So, the Steven Universe movie is finally out, to extreme success and tons of love being dedicated to an angry Slinky. But did the movie hold up to my expectations, and what exactly did I make of the whole thing? Well, that's what we're here to discuss today. Full spoilers ahead for both Steven Universe the television series and the movie itself, so if you haven't checked them out yet, now's the time to do so. If you've been thinking of giving it a shot but have been on the fence, my first ever essay video on this channel was about why you should watch Steven Universe, so maybe you could check that out if you're skeptical. Without further ado, it's time. Get your cookie cat ice cream, liberate some planets, and let me tell you why. Steven Universe the movie is just as inspiring, challenging, and thoughtful as all that came before it. Steven Universe the movie is an animated musical film based on the hit Cartoon Network animated series created by Rebecca Sugar. It was directed, co-written, and produced by Sugar and her fellow crew members Cap Morris and Joe Johnston, and stars returning voice cast Zach Callison, Estelle, Michaela Dietz, Dee Dee Magnohall, as well as others, alongside newcomer and musical theater veteran Sarah Stiles. The movie takes place 2 years after the finale of Season 5 of the television series, Change Your Mind, and shows us an idyllic look at the world after Steven has saved it from the diamonds. Things, of course, don't stay completely peaceful, as a mysterious gem named Spinel, who seems to have a history with Steven's mother, lands on the planet to threaten all organic life with a giant toxic injector in an attempt to disrupt our heroes' happily ever after. The film premiered on Cartoon Network on September 2nd, 2019 after a rousing marathon of every Steven Universe episode to date, and was met with universal acclaim from critics praising the music, animation, and characters in particular. The movie opens with a brief introduction from the Diamonds before we're reintroduced to a now 16-year-old Steven, giving a greeting message to the universe about his desire to return home for a little R&R, after spending the past 2 years dismantling the gem empires and liberating once colonized planets. Back on Earth, Steven sees off his friend Connie to space camp and celebrates his newfound happily ever after with his friends. Directly after, a giant drill lands on the hillside of Beach City, and a strange cartoonish gem named Spinel appears, announcing her plan to kill Steven and the rest of the Earth. Using a strange scythe, she poops Pearl, Garnet, and Amethyst back to their gem forms and weakens Steven's gem powers, while failing to damage his body. Steven manages to poof Spinel with her own scythe, but it seems that upon reforming, all of the gem's memories are gone, having returned to their original states prior to their time on Earth. Bismuth tells Steven that the scythe is something called a rejuvenator, a device that could reset the mind of a gem back to its factory settings, so to speak. The similarly amnesiac Spinel compares the problem to pieces of a puzzle that need to be united, inspiring Steven to try and create scenarios in which the gems will regain their memories by undergoing similar emotions to the biggest parts of their lives up until now. Eventually, Pearl and Amethyst are able to regain their memories, but Spinel becomes upset after starting to remember some things as well. She takes Steven to a desolate garden in space via the warp pad at his house, revealing that she was once made to be a playmate for Pink Diamond. When Pink Diamond is given a colony on Earth, she tells Spinel to stay put and wait for her in the garden, and then never returns. 6,000 years later, Spinel learns of Pink's fate via Steven's universal message and decides to take out her sorrow on the Earth as a result. Though she temporarily is calmed by Steven, she becomes frantic when she thinks that they only wanted her to turn off the drill and nothing else. Afraid of being abandoned once again, she reactivates the injector and attacks Steven. During the scuffle, Garnet finally recovers her memories, rescuing the humans of Beach City while Steven confronts Spinel alone. Steven finally realizes that his powers haven't returned to him yet because he was so fixated on the desire for an unchanging, happy ending that he's become resistant to the idea of change, which is something he's always advocated for heavily. Finally embracing the nature of change, he regains his powers and battles Spinel, attempting to convince her that she can change as well. Their fight destroys the drill, and after a lot of back and forth, Spinel finally relents after realizing how much she despises what her anger has turned her into. The Diamonds suddenly arrive on Earth, announcing their plans to live there with Steven. Hesitant to accept their offer, Steven introduces them to Spinel, whom they take an immediate liking to. They accept her in the place of Steven, and she happily goes with them, finally among people who will love her unconditionally. Steven and friends rebuild Beach City, aware that though a completely unchanging happy ending can never truly be attained, that they can still get up every day and make things better. What really stands out to me about this movie is the nature of how it presents its themes, specifically when it comes to the idea of happily ever after. The trope of happily ever after is fairly common in media, and particularly in children's media. It's only natural to reach the conclusion of a conflict, see the immediate positive effects of the solution, and to assume that everything from then on will be perfect. Even the end of Season 5 of Steven Universe itself lended a somewhat idyllic look of the world similar to this, with the Diamonds learning the error of their ways, the corrupted gems being healed, and all seeming well. Steven Universe the movie, by contrast, takes a somewhat more mature approach to this topic, establishing that happily ever after isn't often something that actually exists, sadly. There's always going to be some sort of conflict or complication on the horizon, especially in the world we live in today. For every victory we achieve, there will also be loss. For every advancement we make, there will always be something happening somewhere that needs to be solved. It's as Steven says to Spinell toward the end of the movie.
There's no such thing as happily ever after. I'll always have more work to do.
Happily ever after doesn't exist. I'll always have work to do. We'll always have work to do. Steven Universe in particular seems like a perfect breeding ground for a message like this, too. It's one of the most progressive cartoons of all time and has made extremely large strides in terms of inclusivity and representation in media. Heck, even the new Dove anti-bullying ad for the character of Stevani directly referenced positivity for intersex individuals and people who identify as non-binary, which is practically unheard of in this medium to date, particularly in the United States. It legitimately made me tear up a little bit. It's a somewhat sobering but hopeful reality that the movie tries to make us face, that no matter how we change things and make them better, there's always going to be some degree of hardship that we'll endure. And just because we get ours, so to speak, doesn't mean that we can become complacent and stop fighting for those less fortunate than we are. Speaking of those less fortunate, let's talk about the main antagonist of the film, Spinell, because boy do I have a lot of things to say about her. Obviously, in the context of the story itself, Spinell is a former playmate of Pink Diamond, who was outgrown and left alone for thousands of years. In the context of production, it's plainly easy to see that Spinell wears a lot of her animated design influences in plain sight, being highly reminiscent of old rubber hose-style cartoons from the 30s. This isn't a particularly new contrast in newer media either, as Studio MDHR's hit game Cuphead had very similar stylistic influences as well, and both examples seem to be aware of the tumultuous history that comes with some of those influences. As an animator, Sugar writes, I have a really complicated relationship with old cartoons. I love history, but I really don't like nostalgia, and so it makes me want to use those ideas to talk about what they are and what they mean to me. Obviously, as much of a powerhouse of representation as Steven Universe is, it creates a stark contrast when compared to animation of old, like classic Disney or Looney Tunes shorts, that sometimes perpetuated harmful and stereotypical tropes of marginalized people themselves. In short, this feeds almost, in a meta sense, into Spinell's character, as she's quite literally plucked out of a lost and forgotten era. She's outdated, Sugar explains. She knows that, and it hurts her. When she doesn't understand that, she's just so obtuse, and when she does, she's just angry. She's ridiculously toxic, and she knows that she's ridiculous, and it makes her dislike herself even more. It turns her in on herself more. I just find her so interesting, and I love showing that in the form of exactly what she is, which is this cartoon that has been lost to time. She went on to say, for us writing the show as marginalized individuals, I really want to express that if you're somebody who thinks that somebody else deserves to exist less, you are ridiculous. If you're somebody who thinks that it makes sense to take your anger and your personal problems out on other people who have nothing to do with it, then you are ridiculous. That ridiculousness, I want to push it as far as it can go. The one-dimensionality of that, the obtuseness of it, I want to put it on display. I don't want to shy away from the absurdity of that. I have felt the awfulness of it and the frustration of it. Additionally, something that stuck out to me in particular about how Spinell is, well, she's written very well from the standpoint of her issues, sympathetically and with care, but never excusing or downplaying the severity of her wrongful actions. She's extended a hand of care and understanding, but it's up to her to make the choice to recognize her faults and do better for it. Her facial tics, her winces when people become distant from her, and particularly her heavy breathing ramping up to increasingly indignant accusations of being left behind, are all extremely raw and realistic when it comes to people who deal with actual severe abandonment issues. In a way, I don't think I've ever quite seen that done in a children's show before quite as well as that. Breaking away from the story side of things for a moment though, I'd like to tackle some of the more technical aspects. The movie is animated beautifully with fluid scenes and breathtakingly bright and pleasing color palettes. The designs are smooth and simple and look very sharply appealing to the eye, and the backgrounds are often immaculate and gorgeous to look at. Some of the better fight scenes of the film as well, in particular during the songs Other Friends and Change, were put together animation-wise by the brilliant Takafumi Hori, a former employee of the Japanese animation studio Trigger, who worked on Kill la Kill and Little Witch Academia among other projects. This lends these scenes in particular a sense of extremely fluid and brilliant composition, which serves to enhance the action even more for these key scenes, and deliver even better fights than have ever been seen in the series thus far. Speaking of the songs, God, the soundtrack is absolutely lovely, with a star-studded cast of musical contributors from returning duo Aivi and Surasshu, to Amy Mann, Ted Leo, James Fauntleroy, Macy Stewart, Mike Kroll, Chance the Rapper, and more. The songs have an absolutely perfect balance of catchy and emotional hits, which make excellent use of leitmotif as well, which I'm always big on for musicals. Newly contributing voice actress Sarah Stiles does an excellent job as Spinel, both spoken and in song, and delivers a suitably high-energy but not too hammy performance of her character.
A monster? Where is it? No, I don't see it.
True to Steven Universe fashion, Stiles also has a long-standing career in Broadway and off-Broadway theater. She performed the role of Kate Monster in the hit musical Avenue Q, as well as the role of Joanne in the musical Vanities. She was nominated for the Tony Award for Best Featured Actress in a Play in 2015 for her performance in Hand to God, as well as in a musical for her 2019 performance in Tootsie. Returning cast from the show pull out stellar performances as usual, with Zach Callison's newer, more mature take on Steven feeling like a wonderfully natural progression of his character, as well as a perfect opportunity for him to wax his improved musical talents, which have come a long way since the days of singing about giant women. Steven Universe the movie is an absolutely blistering 82 minutes of beautifully animated, breathtakingly scored, and thoughtfully written musical film with lovable characters, a solid plot, catchy songs, and an optimistic outlook matched only by its maturity in approaching it. It just goes to show that despite what some might tell you, your problems may never actually be one and done, but they don't have to be impossible to surmount either. Change can be achieved, peace can be reached, and fighting doesn't necessarily have to be part of that equation for it to happen. But also, conflict is something we will inevitably encounter in life, and there will always be people out there that aren't as lucky as we are. And if we have the power to make a difference or the opportunity to lend them our help, we owe it to those people to keep fighting for an even brighter future. Things can always get better. People can always change their minds. We can always make a difference. And that's why, even now, I still believe in Steven. And why, if you haven't already, you should probably watch the Steven Universe movie. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into my video talking about the Steven Universe movie. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the movie too. I really enjoyed it myself. I didn't plan to actually make a video about it, but when I saw it, I was like, I have to talk about it, because I had so much to say. That being said, obviously this isn't my next major essay video that I've been hinting at. This is pretty short as far as those go. And, but yes, I am still working on that, so, like, don't think that this just got shoved right in front of it and that's not being done anymore. Like, that is still in the cooker. I just, you know, I need to work on that more, and this is just a quick little other thing to slide out in the meantime. If you want to catch me on social media, I have a Twitter over at NezumiVA. I also have a Tumblr blog called NezumiVA. I have a Reddit community subreddit thingy where you can post and talk and stuff. That exists too. It'll be linked in the description. And of course, I also have a Patreon if you want to shove some money my way to help continue making my videos. I would greatly appreciate it. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching to the end. And have a good day. Peace.